whenever I get emotional or caught up in something, to pause and reflect in that kind of perspective. It's like, okay, there's all these external things that are happening. I can't control that, but I can control how I interpret those events and then how I react to those events.
Yep.
And then that kind of gives me my power back and kind of grounds me back to, okay, this is my reality that I am shaping, that I have the ability to manipulate and control and influence right now. Those things are out of my control, so I should not even worry about those.
And we're here, stoked. It's nice to talk with you. Ironically, as I mentioned, we were both at Camp Fest. I don't know, was that 4 years ago?
Camp MoGraph,
sorry. Yeah.
2.5 years ago or something like that.
And I thought I saw you, and I know I did, but I was like either too shy or I wasn't sure if it was you, and I didn't want to come up and bother you. But so now we're meeting via digital form, which is good. But yeah. And I've been rapidly consuming all the things that you've made. I remember being really impressed and really kind of motivated, as most people are, I think, with the work that you've been putting out there within your space and how you've shared your love of making things with the world. And then that happened, and then I got really busy, and then I refound you again. And then and I was like, oh my goodness, like they've gotten better. So right. I just want to thank you personally because, and I'll get into this further, but like the work that you've been putting out there has a significant core value for me. And I think a lot of people as well. You're giving a lot of good stuff out there that I think that in the YouTube space is very noisy with a lot of used car salesmen, slick kind of, It's really grimy. It makes me feel gross, right. And your work and the things that you've created. I don't even want to call it content because I think that even puts it in a place that I don't think it belongs. Prepare for lots of flattery. But no, it's been fantastic, and I really appreciate it. And it's a high goalpost, I think, for anybody that's making work about sharing themselves and their lives with. So it's been great. So thank you, Matthew, for being here.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you for having me. And that feeling is very much reciprocated. I've been following your career, ever since I started motion design. And obviously you've been a really big pillar in the community as somebody who has pursued the art and, this is the Lexus quote, like the pursuit of perfection, right? And the pursuit of expression. And I think you've been a really good pillar for that, somebody for me to witness and aspire towards, just to see somebody's like, okay, forget about all the other stuff and then the noise aspect of motion design, and like, what about the art, like the beauty of like making something that's very expressive for what's in here so that you could wear it on your sleeve for other people to see and experience. So that's one thing that I automatically connected with you and your work since the early days. And I know you've been really pushing for that, and that's been a big core message, at least from what I can extract externally as an observer.
Wow, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that's coming through, because that is the intention. The intention is to live that artist life, whatever that is, but it's just to have I was riding my bike the other day, and I was thinking about you and all the stuff you've been putting out, and because sometimes when I ride, it's very intense. I'm like going really fast, and it's this whole thing, but I have meditative thoughts that happen when I'm doing it. And I was thinking to myself that you can make anything cool if you follow it with your authentic love of things. Does that make sense? And I feel like when I'm consuming the things that you're putting out there, like it's like let's talk about the topic of mechanical keyboards. For a while there, I was like, I want to get into this, and then I think we talked about like using the difference between the Mac and the PC and how to bridge over. This is a while ago. We were talking with the MX Master and Logitech and jumping between the machines and all this kind of stuff. And And then I got into mechanical keyboards, and then I saw that you did, but you went like super into it. And I watched all your videos, and it reinvigorated my love of this weird thing, like keyboard love. You know, it's like, it's really cool. What I'm getting at is that I love that you're sharing your authentic love of things. Like it's kind of a rare thing where I feel like a lot of people out there, I don't know if this feels true for you, but people follow the wrong route. You know, I feel like they're like, oh, this is trending, or this is cool. I'm gonna get into this thing or so. How have you found your North Star with a lot of things? Like, how have you said, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, I don't care if other people think it's not cool, I'm going to make it cool, my style, you know, which is what I see and I feel with your work, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'm sure you have this same feeling, because I could see that in your work as well. But for me, it's like I know that there's a lot of noise out there. And one thing that I've noticed, been able to witness about other people who are very successful, and successful meaning achieving the thing that they want to achieve, their goals, have just been so laser focused at putting their heads down and doing the work and focusing on the things that they want to do. There's plenty of things that are always going on, things that are changing, tools, you know, AI, like just the whole landscape is always changing. The world is always changing. That part has never changed, right? Like, I think people always hold on to this idea. It's like, oh, the good old days when this used to be this way. And it's like, no, the whole world is in constant motion, constant change, and so are we. But a lot of those things, you just really have to be able to kind of block out a lot of those things and then realize why. Why am I doing the thing that I want to do? And I think for the most part, a lot of people don't ask themselves that question. They see, it's like, okay, this is a new trend on Instagram or whatever social platform, and I want to grow my account, so I'll do it. And then they'll just keep changing. Every time the wind blows, they'll kind of change direction. And they stay surface level, and all they'll ever be known for is just the person who also followed trends like everybody else. And I think that's where most people, they just don't end up standing out. Like, they might grow and their metrics and numbers might explode because they're really good at following trends. But I think the ones who don't know how to navigate post that, right, like after they've gone viral or after they've gotten popular, you know, what do you do with that? What do you do with 1,000 likes, 1,000,000 likes? Like, what is that even worth? And I think people who don't have a clear why don't know what to do with that after. So for me, I think, as I'm going to be 39 this year, so I'm getting older.
I was going to ask you, that was my next big question. Is how old are you? We're close. I'm 40, so we're right there, Yeah, you know, it's like I've had a good enough, lots of road behind me, right? And, you know, I pursued all kinds of silly things in my younger days, and I'm probably still pursuing a lot of silly things now, and I'm okay with that. I just know that as I get older, hopefully I'm getting wiser, because I make a lot of mistakes, and I get to learn from the mistakes and victories and successes of other people that I get to witness around me. So in that, I just feel like, okay, I could keep trying to chase the thing that's going to get me the most attention, or I can just focus on the thing that I really love right now, that I could really sink my teeth in and go beyond the surface level, because everybody's surface level these days. Let me go like 10 steps deep for something like mechanical keyboards, and then what will happen from there. And that's just my gut, my intuition, and usually that kind of blossoms into something unexpectedly beautiful that I had no expectation of. So I'll give you an example. I think I really took the deep dive into custom mechanical keyboards about 2-ish years ago. Now I have maybe, 20 keyboards that I've built. And, you know, like I'm like really deep both into the things I've collected, the things that I've learned, the people that I've met. And what's happened with this is, like, not only am I passionate about custom mechanical keyboards, now I'm designing products in this space. Yeah, I love that.
So I'm crossing over the things that
threshold
I love doing as a maker, as a designer, into the thing that I'm already very passionate about. And it's like once those two things kind of overlap and sync, then all of a sudden you're moving so fast and going so deep because you're exploring territories that other people cannot see if they stay on the surface level.
Yep. It's fucking awesome. I love it. I can see it too. What's great about what you're doing is you're documenting your progress in your journey. So you go from, and I'm going to say obsession, and I mean it. I think it's an obsession. You have an obsessive, which is, and when a lot of people think that obsessive is attached to something negative, I don't think it's a negative thing when it's something positive outcome. I think obsession can be bad if it's towards something that's harmful. But like you said, it's like, okay, and I can see it. We have similar paths where you love a certain thing to the point where you want to take it apart to understand how it's made. So you want to see how the magic's made. This is when obsession turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into an adventure. And I love that because that's really, I mean, what the hell are we doing here?
Right.
We're like, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I'm pretty sure once I'm gone, that's it. So let's just keep writing and have a good time and celebrate that.
Right.
And let our curiosities. I always say my art is a vessel to explore curiosities. That's literally the whole intention of art. That's from me, and everything along with the ride. So let's just talk about mechanical keyboards and unravel this thing, for example, because it's something we both kind of love, but you've gone way further than me. But the thing I love about you just did the circle. So those of you that are listening that might not have caught it is what I think you're saying is that your obsession turned into curiosity, or your curiosity turned to obsession. That obsession then turned you into becoming a maker of things, which made you help you understand the cycle. And now you're in harmony with that, which is fantastic. You're talking about the Grove Made collaborations and then potential other things that you're interested in.
Yeah. And I've never heard it described as a circle, that full circle coming in. So that's novel to me. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're writing it down with your perfect pen in here. Awesome notes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, I think the way that I've looked at it is always, and this is only something that's happened, I would say, over the past few years. It's not like, I can't say that I've intentionally done this my whole life. Maybe I have, but I've only been aware of it in the past few years. Yeah. And it's this idea of overlapping and condensing efforts for like the biggest impact possible. Yeah.
As you get older, you realize that the time is the biggest value. So what you do with it is everything. If you don't manage your time right, it's just, you're literally wasting your life. And as you get older, you're like, oh shit, I only have so much of this left. And I also, I'm going to jump here, but I think it's also because you became personally sovereign and aware. After post-COVID, I think a lot of people realized, oh shit, it's a reset. I've been living and working from home for 12 some odd years. So when COVID happened, I was like, well, I mean, that's it. I mean, there's really not that big of a difference other than, other than obviously the pandemic, but I was worried. So when you started working from home and then you were like, well, I want my home to be awesome. And then you're like, well, I'm obsessive. So I'm giving you words. I don't know if this is accurate, but yes, but it makes sense that you have become self-aware of this because you've given yourself sovereignty. Is that right? Like where you're like, this is my time now. I'm going to sit and think about what I want. Is this true? Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's just because, at least in the pandemic, for me, I was working in the office over at Blind and the Future out in Santa Monica with Chris, though. So it's like I had peers and people to congregate with, share ideas with, and build a company with, right? And that, for me, like one core driver for me is like I love helping people. That's a big thing. That's a big thing. That's a part of me. So being in that space, being in that environment, really brought that out of me. When the pandemic happened, what happened is we all became isolated, and all of a sudden that beautiful exchange of ideas and energy was gone from my life. So I always told Christo, who was my teacher back at Art Center in 2006. I've known this guy for a long time. Yeah, and eventually I became his intern and then freelancer and employee. It's like I told Chris all the time, it's like, as long as I'm learning something, I'm going to stay here. next to you working with you because he's a hyper learner, he's a smart guy, and I just love the way that he thinks. And it's like I'm drafting behind that, and through osmosis I'm learning a lot. So it's like as long as I'm learning something, I'm gonna stick around. And then it was COVID that kind of broke all of that, where it's like, okay, I don't have this mentor figure in my life anymore. I do, but I have to schedule a Zoom call with this guy to try to have a casual conversation. You know, it's weird.
Yeah, it's a different dynamic
versus just being in the office. It's like, all right, let's go grab lunch, and then things will just happen.
Yeah,
right, because we're all in the same momentum, like heading in the same direction. Where something like COVID, just like, okay, we know we have a goal, but we don't really know what each other is quite doing in the same capacity as if you were in person. So that detachment gave me a lot of space. It's like, okay, well, my work is done, and it just became about the work, at least for my relationship to those companies, and then I had a lot of time for introspection. It's like, what do I want? It's like, okay, I'm doing the work, but what am I getting out of it? And it sounds selfish to say that, but I think that is an important question that we all have to ask.
This is how you get to the why lives. You just mentioned, you know, like how do you get to the why if you don't be selfish and ask yourself these questions? Yeah, right. It's healthy. It's mentally healthy. Yes. Yeah. So many people don't get selfish with themselves to ask themselves why I'm doing this thing. They don't realize that the best version of themselves is the best thing for the world. Because the worst version of yourself is the worst version for the world. Yeah.
Right.
Right. You get in traffic, you want to punch somebody. It's because you're not aligned with yourself. When you're in your best self, you're just like, who cares? Cut me off. I don't care. Right. You can't faze me, you know, because I'm already the best version.
Exactly. And that's a daily practice and something you just get better with over time. Right. It's one kind of philosophy that I'm really into is stoic philosophy.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up. Stoicism. Stoicism.
Right, stoicism. So the idea that you can't control anything external, but you can control everything internal. How you think, act, and react to things. And to me, like, that has been something that has been very powerful for me to just, whenever I get emotional or caught up in something, to pause and reflect in that kind of perspective. It's like, okay, there's all these external things that are happening. I can't control that. But I can control how I interpret those events and then how I react to those events. And then that kind of gives me my power back and kind of grounds me back to, okay, this is my reality that I am shaping, that I have the ability to manipulate and control and influence right now. Those things are out of my control, so I should not even worry about those.
I've been searching for stoicism my whole life, and I've just found it in like my late 30s, and it's
same here.
And actually, it's hitting me perfectly because, and also I think there's a lot of misinterpretations with stoicism. People think like, oh, if you're stoic, you look at the world jaded and all these things. That's actually the opposite. You should feel everything. Marcus Aurelius, all these people that are much different worlds, they were very emotional and they felt death and they had dealt with death and all these different things. But the way, like you said, the outside world, you cannot control it. But what you can control is your interface with the world, how you interact with it, what you give to it. And that's such a difficult thing to deal with, I think, especially... I mean, there's always been a time in humanity, in our psychology, that's been difficult to allow the outside. You have a loved one that you've invested your life into, and then they get hit by a car or get cancer or something, and it's like, all you do is you get humbled. The life says you are nothing, and then all you can say is, well, fuck. I can just be, if every day I wake up and if I'm having even just a better day, that it's like I'm beating the odds, you know, which is a humble thing. That's cool. When did you encounter stoicism?
Probably around 6 or so years ago.
Who introduced you to
it? It might have been through a podcast interview, probably with
Daly.
I forget the author's last name now. It's like Ryan
Daly. I think Holiday.
Is it Ryan Daly? Yeah, Ryan Holiday.
Yeah,
Ryan Holiday. Yeah. Yes.
He's got the Daily Stoic or something like that.
The Daily Stoic.
Yeah.
yeah, so I found my way into his work and then a few other people, but like he was a really good one. Like The Obstacle is the Way, I think, was a big book.
That was a hard one for me to get through too, honestly. I have a huge ego and I'm fully aware of it. And I love that I have a big ego. I thank God I can believe in myself at this level, whatever God or whatever. But yeah, it was hard for me because it was like contradicting to my ego. Was like, dude, this is crap. But I was like, the truth hurts sometimes, you know, and it's important to listen to those things and to also acknowledge the fact that you are just always a student of life, you know. But sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but that's so no. The Obstacle is the Way. That book, when you read it, did you have friction with it, or did it hit you and permeate?
No, that hit me and permeated. For some reason, a lot of books are like that. I don't, at least in recent history, once somebody recommends a book and I start either reading it or listening to it, because I'll check it out first and maybe like seeing what other things, short form content they have out there, or read the synopsis of it. So once I've said, okay, there's some decent ideas in this book or this piece of content, I'm going to go in. So I put all those things aside, and usually I put on my student hat where it's like, I know nothing. And the world is being revealed to me from another lens through this author's work.
Beautiful.
And that's what I really enjoy about a book like that or other authors, is that they show the same world that I've experienced, but with completely different eyes and ears. And so I get to hear the thoughts of this person and how they've interpreted it through a series of their, personal experiences and how they feel and have reacted to things. So Ryan Holiday, I mean, he's an interesting author because he has his perspective. He's had his own egos and things that he's had to deal with in his own life, big events. But what I like is that he kind of filters through the past Stoics and different stories. So
Seneca.
He shares multiple perspectives, right? So it just helps me kind of see the same problem or issue or something that we deal with from multiple vantages or viewpoints. So that just really helps me understand my own life a little bit better, because it takes me out of looking at my whole life from this perspective, and then I go to the other side of the room and look at the same thing. It's like, that's what the back of my head looks like, right? Or that's what, like I didn't know because I kept looking at it. I could only see it from right here. And, it's kind of that same phenomenon. So that was a long way of saying that I learned a lot from his book, and I was very open to his and many other authors' works.
I love that you go in with, I'm going to think about that when I approach these books, because I do the same way, but I've not materialized it in the sense of I'm putting on my student hat. I think that's fantastic because you're compartmentalizing your perspective so that you can then absorb as much as possible. Your ego gets out, and then you're just like, okay, let me just take this in. A good author, a good storyteller, a good purveyor of words can transcend those barriers, because oftentimes I don't mean to be a jerk, but sometimes I read a book and I'm in the middle. I'm like, this is not good. It's just not. There's no flow to it and stuff. And maybe it is good. I just don't have the palate for it or whatever. But a great book though. So another thing, there's been a lot of things that you've done that's changed my life for the better. This recent thing that you've turned me on to, I've heard of Notion. It's sitting in the back of my head. People whisper about it, and I've heard about it. I'm watching your videos and I'm like, this is fucking rad. This is cool. I like desk stuff and I like building things. And then you're like, and then I'm using Notion and I'm like, okay, what's this Notion thing? And then I fall into it and I realize, oh my God, my whole life I've been absorbing all these books. I mean, my whole room is filled with books.
I can see it.
Yeah. And that's just one wall. Every wall basically has books everywhere. I love books, but I was thinking my whole life that I could just read a book and absorb it. That is the most falsified thought that I've ever had. And the irony that it took me all this time to realize it. There's been this epiphany that happened to me. Check this out. So I'm obsessive like you. So I go, okay, let me learn Notion. So I go full saturation for a week. Everything. I need to learn everything. Building templates, databases, how this link, PPV system, all of this stuff. The second brain thing, and then the Thiago Silva's, you were telling me about that too, para method and all this stuff.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is all cool. And then I realized, how do I digitize all my books? Because when I read, I take notes and I do the highlighter thing, but let's be honest, my whole ecosystem of reading is I buy a book, I sit there with it, I give it the time, I acknowledge things, I pull out highlights. That is important to me at that time. I put the book on the shelf and then I go, yeah, that book was good. And then nothing permeates for long term.
Yes.
So I bought a Kindle. Okay.
Nice. Okay.
Now I have the Kindle. I have like 200 books on here. I take these books, I highlight it, then I translate all my highlights and notes from the Kindle directly into my Notion library database. So at any point in time, I connect it all using the para method and the PPV basically, which is like this book connects to this tangible thought, that thing. So whenever I'm trying to search something in my own personal Wikipedia, boom, I can find it instantly, and it's my own perspective. You did that. You gave me that seed to go check out Notion. You didn't tell me, but I was like, this is an interesting tool. You're a purveyor of thought. This is an interesting thing. And then I went full savage mode like I normally do.
Right.
And then, so thank you. This has been a huge upgrade. And I read for 30 to 60 minutes minimum a day, and I just absorb as much as possible. I'm currently reading, I've read this book before, but I'm reading it again, called Spark Joy by Marie Kondo. Marie Kondo? Yeah.
Marie Kondo? Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you.
Yeah, so you're welcome. Yeah. For reading books, the funny thing is I love consuming knowledge, but I don't like reading books. I don't personally enjoy it. I don't go out of my way to read any books. And I'm completely guilty. I probably have finished maybe 1% of all the books that I've even started.
That's an honest.
Yeah. And the reason why is because I already understand the concept. So for most books, it's like, and I learned this, like I think I inherently had done this, but because I think I'm a type of personality where it's like, once I get it, it's like, I'm done. Okay, I can apply it already.
Yeah.
The moment I understand how I can apply it, I don't need to read anymore because it's more important that I apply it than for me to understand the complete idea. And that will get me in trouble sometimes, like, okay, I'm going down this path. It's like, oh, I should have read a little bit more and understand where the landmines are. But, sometimes I have to learn the hard way like that. But the person who kind of put this kind of way of thinking into like a formal process I was reading the book Limitless by Jim Quick.
I've read that, but I don't remember it. So
yeah. Well, there was one chapter in there that I thought was amazing that helped me just see content consumption in a very different way, which is, he's like, there's a lot of books that we read for knowledge, but most of it just evaporates, right? How many times have you picked up a book and then you don't absorb any of it?
No one does, really.
No one does, right?
We're brains for thinking, not for storing. Yeah.
Exactly. So he said, before you read this next chapter, ask yourself a question. What do you want to get out of this next chapter? That will help you search and find the thing that you want and only extract that information. Everything else is just noise.
Yeah, our fluff.
So
it's filling pages.
Yeah, it's fluff. And it's not that it's not good, it's just not relevant to you right now.
Yeah.
So there's no way for you to apply it. So it's like Chris likes to say this all the time, Christo, it's like we're information rich. Right? Learning how to navigate that is probably like one of the most important
it's massive.
Tools or skills that we need today, right? Because
saturation.
You can know anything. Exactly. You could Google search it or find any book. You can find anything you want. But it's like, what are you trying to do with it? And that goes back to our conversation earlier, the why. Like, okay, you can build a social audience somewhere, or you can put out all this work, but why?
Yes. Yeah.
And if you understand why, then you'll see how the pieces connect and how they link together and how they can become something meaningful to your life and to other people that experience it.
Yeah. This is the intention. This is the reason. And if you don't have it, we're data rich. We're also data dumb. We're also data numb too. It's like, it's because, and that's a perfect example. Like, you can be data rich, but let's use an analogy of being on a freeway. You can have the most amazing freeway in the most free country of all these things, but you could be stuck in a traffic jam. The moment you can figure out how to fly over everybody, that's the trick. And this is why I said that this whole unlock for me. So if you're listening to this and you're into books and stuff, like, ask yourself, read a book. The next week, ask yourself to distill at least one concept accurately. I guarantee you probably can't nail it as close as you think you can. Your ego tells you so. Give it a month. If you do nail it, the thing is, what I'm saying is our memory is fraught with failure. You know, did you ever see that research they did on 9/11, and they asked all these different people that were faced with survived 9/11, but they were close to it or further away from it. They all had different recreations of the same thing. That's just when the brain is under trauma. So that's a different thing. The memory system is highly flawed, basically. But it is also flawed when you are consuming a book, going into it to extract, and then you jump off to have dinner or another thing. Your brain goes, okay, I got to be this social creature. Now I'm going to be absorbing this thing. And it's too much to ask of your brain. So building a digital second brain system of the knowledge that I want, because I love knowledge, but I'm same as you. I get a problem where I'm like, I hate not finishing this book, but it's like, come on, man. You've said this thing to me for the past 30 pages. Like, and maybe I need to hear it that many times, but I'm similar to you where if I get the concept, I don't need to sit with it anymore. It's clear to me. I can just act upon it, you know? But I don't know. That's a tough one. When was the last time, we're going to get deep here. When was the last time that you were emotional enough to cry? And do you know why it was?
That's a hard one. I feel like I do get emotional a lot of times in my personal relationships. So with my wife, my family members, like I can get pretty emotional in a good way. Usually what it is, it's like a pause and reflection of how grateful I am to have these people in my life, right? To have a nurturing environment, and then also to have the challenges that come with it, right? And so those are the things that both make me feel kind of joyful and grateful, but then also realizing that, you know, I'm going through something very challenging, and if I want to maintain a particular relationship or keep it healthy, I have to go through the difficult parts in order to get to the other side, to get to the next level of that relationship and continue on. If it's a choice of wanting to continue these relationships with, you know, friends, family, people. So that's kind of like a broad way of saying that it happens all the time when it comes to personal relationships. But I don't feel very emotional about professional work.
Okay.
I think I get very excited about that, mostly because of what we can produce at the end. And I think that's the only kind of real feeling that I have towards it. Everything else kind of just feels like work, and it's like I'm just like heads down and do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like you're really good at compartmentalizing things as well too. And if you're able to keep your social, personal world relationship, like family and your wife and stuff, in this category of your emotions, and then work in this other one, that's probably really healthy, because I've come to the consensus that there is no such thing as work-life balance. I've tried it. I've tried so many different things. Maybe that's just me throwing in the towel with it, or maybe that's me seeing the picture clearly and realizing you can't tell me there's a thing of balance with this thing. But I guess there is. Like the thing that you mentioned in the beginning of your observation of me is literally me being in love with art, and me being in love with art means I cry. And means I feel all the pain of it, you know, so, which is tricky. I love seeing you and your dad do stuff. That is so cool, dude. I love that. I can see, I don't know if this is true, but I can see, because my dad's a carpenter, he's a journeyman, and he's a true, like a real man, you know, like I don't know how to say other than like he knows how to build things. He's one of the last generations of people that care about building their own things, and I love seeing your connection with your dad. I know what I love is that you don't do these weird cheesy interviews where you're you just have you and him and your brother working on stuff, and I could tell, like, without that, that's like, how could you do what you do? Like, they're huge. This is massive, you know, which building and creating things, does that come from your pops, or how did that come about? Like, what's your love of building things?
It's definitely, he's a big influence. I've been very fortunate to always be in very good nurturing environments ever since I was very young. my parents, my family, they always encouraged my creativity. They never hindered it. Right? So if they knew that I was into the arts and see me drawing and sketching all the time, you know, for my birthdays or Christmas, they would get me art supplies.
Wow, it's beautiful.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're
so
Filipino too, right? So they weren't like, go be a nurse or a doctor or something like that. So yeah.
Thankfully, grateful. You know, I'm very grateful that my parents never put that pressure on me.
Shout out to your parents. That's fantastic.
I know.
Wonderful people.
Exactly. And I'm so grateful for that. And like, they never even pushed me to go to college. But I don't know if that was because they didn't care or if they just were unaware of how the system works here in the States, right? Because like even me, like I was probably going through and finishing my junior year in high school. I was like, oh shoot, I have to do all this stuff if I want to get into university. I was like, well, that ship has sailed. You know, I wasn't paying attention to that. But it's just a way of, to go back to your question, it's like, yeah, the things that I've learned from my dad mostly is resourcefulness. Growing up, both my parents are immigrants and they came here with not a lot of things and they've had to build a life here. And I think the way that they were able to do that is to just be just scrutinize waste, right? And it's like, okay, do we have to buy a new thing or can we use the old thing? Or can we rebuild something that we already have, a makeshift version of what we have in order to fulfill the challenge or problem that we have? So I'll give you a couple of examples where I didn't realize this until, you know, I've become a maker myself and an adult myself. Where when I was younger, my dad built a lot of things for us. Like for me and my brother, he built an entire bunk bed. And I was like, oh shoot, like I took that for granted when I was a kid. I was like, my dad would ask like, hey, you know, you want this thing? Or we would ask him and then he would build it. Or like an entertainment center, like cabinets and everything for our TV and everything. And like he built that. Most people, they just buy those things, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, I have a problem. I need to put my TV somewhere or my bed somewhere. What's the thing we can buy? But for him, it's like, well, I don't want to spend money. I'd rather save it. What tools and materials do I already have? How can I repurpose something? And he would use scrap wood, you know, he would use scrap things or just be very frugal about what he spent money on. And he's still that way today. Like I go to their house all the time and I see they've found something. It's like, oh, somebody was throwing this away. So we rebuilt it and turned it into a new holder for all of our plants. I'm like,
yeah, they're big plant
people gorgeous.
Too.
They're big plant people. They have hundreds of plants.
That's so cool.
And I get that from them too, from my mom and dad. But yeah, I get a lot from my dad and from my mom as well. But many other people along the way. It's I could not only attribute them. I've had many good role models in my life that have influenced me in that way.
Sounds like you are obviously blessed with wonderful creators, your parents, which is fantastic. That are. You also went to Art Center, which is like that's insanely filled with a lot of quality, high thinking, powered individuals, which is fantastic as well for your brain to develop. How do you seek mentors now? Like, do you seek mentors or where are you at with all that kind of stuff? Like, are you constantly in flux of finding people to discover those things? It seems like you're constantly learning and you're obviously in this other part of your cycle where you've come full circle to becoming a legitimate maker of things on a high scale, which is interesting. But yeah, like how do you seek that advice and guidance and stuff through life?
Yeah, I think for me, it just always starts with the curiosity first, right? So we're going back to custom mechanical keyboards since we were just talking about that. So, I mean, there's a lot of designers and makers in the space, and I entered it as a consumer. It's like, okay, I love these things. Why do I like these things? What do I enjoy about them? And I'm just breaking it down. The reverse engineering is happening. And then I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. Like, how did they make this? Who made this? And then I seek those people out. And then usually, you know, I'll develop some kind of camaraderie. I'll just interact with their content or wherever they are online, develop a relationship. And next thing you know, I'm able to be in a room with them. It's like a Discord chat where I get to ask them questions or or show them something that I'm working on, and vice versa, because luckily I bring kind of a wealth of experience when it comes to design and content creation that they also value. So I have something to trade. It's this nice thing where I get to seek other people out who are experts in other spaces that I am curious about but don't know anything, but I have something to add to that. So if we're both sitting around in a campfire, we could pass back and forth all kinds of good information that they're curious about and I'm curious about. And sometimes those things become collaborations. Other times they just become a moment where I get to sit down and really pick their brain, like, ooh, why did you design this? Or like, what's the process of doing this and that? And what I found is not everybody's open to sharing that, but there are a good handful of people who they have an abundance mindset where they feel like they don't have to gatekeep any of the information that they have, but rather they're just so generous with it because they know if they put that out there, it reciprocates in odd and wonderful ways. I learned this very early on from Chris Do when I was in school, and he was just like pretty much telling us all the secrets of motion design, right? Where a lot of other studios and designers, they kind of held very tightly like the things that made them special. Chris was like, if you're holding on to a trick to make yourself special, like you're not gonna have a career for very long, because as soon as that thing is obsolete, like you're obsolete.
Unfortunately,
so it's
it goes against your nature.
Unfortunately,
when you're doing it, you're like, oh, this is my special thing, like I should covet it, and you should, but but it isn't you, it's your ego speaking. Exactly. So giving it away and you get things back, and then it just adds to this beautiful cycle. Again, it's this abundance mindset that it's not a zero-sum game. I'm not going to run out by giving away things. I'm actually going to get more by giving away things. And it's a real, I feel like I'm in this state where it's just like, I that's how I view life and a lot of the interactions I have with people and the projects I take on. Beautiful, Matthew. I feel it in what you're doing. I feel there's a wholesome nature to it. Even like, I can't recall the guy's name, but there's a guy that you sought out for doing like CNC woodworking machine stuff for one of your wooden mechanical keyboards. What's his name?
Well, there's two people. So MK Milling, he milled a custom wooden keyboard that I wanted to get designed. So I worked with him, and then there was another person. His name is Bao. He runs a channel called Design Craft Workshop. But he's a woodworker out in Texas.
Love it.
And he helped me with another keyboard component out of wood. So both of them helped me because I was like, I can't do this on my own. I don't have a CNC. I don't have the expertise, but I know what I want. And again, there's just a good exchange there.
It's a great inspiration for me personally, and I know most people that are listening to this, is that oftentimes we get caught up in what we think is the secret or the thing or whatever. And then one thing I noticed too is like you connect business with your enterprise very flawlessly. It's very smooth. That's one thing I also like admire about your take on these things, because when I'm watching a YouTube thing, it goes, what's up, guys? And you're like, dude, chill out first off. And then also it's like so cheesy and so badly done, but your approach is so smooth. And I can see that, and this is, I don't know, I mean, this is important for people to see, is that business attached to art can be symbiotic and done in a crafty, beautiful way. It seems like a lot of your videos are produced or have some sort of sponsorship attached to it, but it's so smooth, like, which I love. It's you're not running it like you're not, and also you're finding alignments. It's like, I like keyboards, so I'm going to talk to this company, and then I like to do this thing, and then it makes sense because it's a additive thing, which is fantastic. Your process of when you go in there and you have an abundance to share, like most of us. I'm sure you write out all your ideas, and then you find alignments to people, like companies that already put a lot of energy into something, and then it's like a campfire exchange, right? You're like, okay, well, I do this video, how about this? Okay, that's fantastic. You're operating with the business is really interesting. The details of doing that, it's got to be interesting, but the fundamentals is basically that, right? Finding alignments and then building a relationship.
Right. And then realizing you have to have something of value to trade. I think most people, operate from a selfish perspective, which is fine, right? Again, we have to know what we want, but then they don't really have anything to trade, right? It's like, hey, I want a free thing, or I want you to sponsor my content, but like, what are you giving them? And I think a lot of people are a little absent-minded when it comes to that stuff. For me, it's like I realize I'm a pretty good storyteller. I have good production quality. That comes from my history of being in production and TV commercials for a long time, and I get to bring that over, right? I think like a designer, so I think about how am I going to solve the problems and connect the dots, especially when it comes to something like commerce. So when I make a video, I'm already 110% in passionate about making the thing, right? Like whatever I'm making, and sometimes, like, you know, I'm producing these videos, I always try to look for somebody else to pay for it. And again, that's a selfish way, but by attaching a sponsor to this, I look at it as a way for them to win as well. It's not like I'm just looking for like money, like give me money, because otherwise I would be taking all kinds of really weird, wonky, cringy deals, right? 99% of things that hit my inbox of people who want to sponsor me, I say no to, because it's not a good fit.
Yes.
So I'm just very careful with who I choose to do work with, because I want the least amount of friction possible for my audience who's watching and intaking this, but also for me to be able to talk about a product in an authentic way from the sponsor. It's like, oh yeah, well, this connects to this thing that I'm already working on.
I love it.
It's perfect. We all win. And then, they win out of that as well, because they get the right audience who their mind is already primed because of the content that I've presented. They're more willing to accept that versus like, all right, let's stop here for an ad break. And it's something random that maybe is not connected towards them or the content I'm even talking about. So I'm very mindful about that. And I'd rather wait for 3 months to release a video, putting out some random sponsor, than to just like wait for the right sponsor to like link to this thing. Because if I can align these two together, we all win from that.
Massive. Matt, I'm really hoping everybody here that's listening to this conversation from here on forwards and the future listeners really just heard what you just said, because that is the frictionless symbiotic relationship, the power of saying no, the principles in which you have that are connected to your brand and who you are. That's essential. It's so essential in a system where everybody's saying yes and just trying to cut each other down and all this. You're creating a wealth of your own. You're creating a currency of your own, which I think is fantastic. It's very inspiring. And there's an irony that when you're saying this is I've had a lot of approaches of, hey, can you sponsor this or this and that? And 99% of the time I say no too. Even with the podcast, I've said no so many times to things. First and foremost, I don't want to be in service to anybody but myself for this thing. This is a selfish endeavor for me and the guests involved, and that is it. And I like how clean and pure that is in a world where I have to do client work, and that's a whole different dynamic. The art dies in that concept where can die. But what I'm seeing with yours is that it kind of becomes a symbiotic thing because of the way that your intention, which I think is really inspiring. And it made me really think about like, maybe there's a way to do this with grace. Maybe there is a way to find something that I love that the world might not know and show it through my lens. And that's a great lesson. And that's something I've been taking from like just studying how you're doing what you're doing, which is really fantastic because it just seems really good, really good alignments. Yeah.
And to that point, I want to step back of one part in our conversation where you're asking about role models. And we noted my parents as well as other people. But when I seek role models all the time, and I use role models and mentors kind of interchangeably in this sense. Meaning, over the years, I've been able to witness people who kind of feel similar to me do amazing things. And witnessing that unlocks the question in them, like in me, that if they can do it, why not me? Right? And I think that's really important for everyone to realize that you are a role model to somebody, and that there are plenty of role models out there. So the people that you kind of are inspired by, you can aspire to be to follow a similar path. And you can't follow somebody's path one to one. And I'll just give a couple of examples here. So there are other YouTube creators in the space that I've discovered over time. So one guy, his name is Justin Say. He's a tech YouTuber, really prolific. He produces amazing content constantly. He has a different vibe than me, all good, but he's a young guy. He's in his like mid-20s, I believe, or even younger 20s. And he's buying properties, he's growing his business, he's growing his team, and he's doing very well for himself. Like, I don't have the energy to be that young 20-year-old to grind that way, but I've seen him take something that was a pillar of creating content and then kind of blossoming and growing in other areas, things that he really likes. Like, he loves racing and he loves travel.
Oh, I think
and
I've
he's
seen
been
this
able
guy.
to he's been able to fold in all of that stuff into his life. So it's like, okay, that's fantastic, that's interesting. Another person is the YouTuber Ali Abdal.
Yeah, Ali.
He loves
yeah
guy. I mean, he loves reading books. He's was a medical professional and then just went full time into content creation. But again, he's somebody where I get to witness. It's like, okay, he started here, he grew his channel, and then he started building things around it. And then one of the biggest influences was Chris Do, because I was working for him under our creative service agency, Blind. And then I watched him build this second company from nothing. It's like, he's going to get on YouTube, he's going to teach, and then he's going to build a business around it. And so all of those were great role model examples for me to say, if they can do it, why not me?
Yeah.
What's different? There's nothing different. Like, I they're all limiting beliefs in my mind previously. Like, I don't feel like I could take the risk or have the capabilities, but witnessing them and kind of seeing them grow throughout the years, it's like, oh, I could probably do this too. And one of the reasons why I try to put what I put out there, it's like, I want to be a good role model for others to map this in their own lives. Like, oh, I could start building this, or I could start doing this.
I love it. It makes a lot of sense, and it's cool. We must always remember that we are always on the shoulders of giants, and symbiotically we are living amongst one another. We talked about stoicism. Stoicism, it was built and created and devised under the minds of hundreds and thousands of human beings that are building the thought off of one another. So the idea that you have, I call them mentors, even if you don't know the person, I call that silent mentors, because it's a one-way conversation. But I think it's fantastic. And the more mentors you can fill in your life that have positive impact, the better. Like I said, you are having a direct impact on my life in a positive way. And that's a special thing. It's something that is a guiding light for me. And it's something that I must praise you for and thank you for, because like, before I was watching your stuff, I was like, my office it's okay. But then I started putting plants in here and adjusting the lights better, so it feels a little bit more like forgiving, because this became a pressure chamber of stress and pain, because it was just like, get in there and get the work done. Because as a CGI artist, you're literally half of your day, if not 80% of your day, is just problem solving. And you're like, why isn't this thing working the way it's supposed to? And I told my wife, it's like, it's created a real bad mental problem for me, because it's like, I didn't do art to make more problems for myself. I wanted to do art to express myself. And we can get into this a little later, but I'm thinking about potentially pivoting my whole entire life to get away from this, because I have to be honest with myself and go, is this really what the life that you want? If every day you wake up and you're in some sort of mental struggle or pain, it's like, what kind of value are you giving yourself, But anyways, I love that. That's really cool. And that's cool that you can see them as a guiding light to help you progress and go through and find those things. This was one of the questions I had. I have a slew of questions as I was watching your videos, and I just randomly on my Notion thing, I was just like, oh yeah, this one right here. Have you considered, and maybe you do it through your channel now, but like, and it sounds like this is one of your pillars of your personality, is giving back or helping others. Do you do that, or have you done that? I'm not sure if I saw that, but do you do like individual mentorships or life coaching kind of things, or is that something that you're interested in or not, or
So, working at the future between 2016 and 2021, that was a majority of my life, right? Chris encouraged me to get from behind the camera to in front of the camera, right? It's like teach the things. There's so many good, valuable things that are locked up inside of you. You just don't know it because you take it for granted. So once he unlocked that in me and I started sharing that, then, it just all started coming out. It's like, wow, all these things that how I think as a designer, as a creative director, how these jobs usually go. Let me try and unpack that in a way that other people can see, because normally this is very privileged information. And let me put it out there so other people can consume and then see those possibilities for themselves. So I did that for many years, and I think that what drove me, because again, I love helping people. But because of the pandemic and all of the introspection and kind of selfishly turning the lens back on me, it's like at the end of the day, I keep pouring my creative cup out and all my energy out to other people, which is good. But what about me? And so I've kind of turned that faucet way, way down over the years and just been a little bit more hyper-focused on like, what are the things that I want to create? And then how can I fold in other people to like still show that aspect of my life. So I still try to share as much as I can in a way that other people can see these possibilities for themselves, but I'm not actively like teaching or anything like that. I do have individual consulting that people can book me for, like by the hour or so. So like anybody can buy time with me if they really want to, but it's kind of expensive because it's like I don't mind doing that. But it's like I want to keep my priority very straight on some of the things that I'm doing right now, and so I do offer that, but I've certainly turned that down, and it's something I do enjoy for people who really want the help,
and need it.
They will go out of their way. They will find this information, like where to book time with me, and then they will spend a good amount of their hard-earned money to have time with me. So. But I don't make it easy. I don't make myself readily available like I used to in the past years.
I love that. It's good that you know your priorities and what your interests are, because when I was doing mentorships and stuff, as much as I loved it, I also realized that, like, I don't know if this is a truth that you might have discovered or found, but I often felt like, who am I to give this advice? I know that I've been down this path and this and that, and maybe this is a self-worth issue. But I felt like, who am I to give this when I'm still on this journey trying to evolve it? It's almost like I'm halfway through this journey. So I kind of know I'm 2 streets ahead of you, but it's like, I'm not to the end. I guess there is no end, but maybe I answer my own question, but I love helping people, but I don't know if this happens for you too, where I get exhausted because it's depleting. Because I am giving so much and I want to give and it's very important to give, but I'm like,
it takes a lot of energy out. Like you have a lot of, you get a lot out of it in terms of the gratification that that hopefully somebody might be better off on their path, that they might be avoiding challenges or heading in, like slightly correcting their direction away from the things that could be either wasting their time or could be harmful, but we don't know. And to your question, or the thing that you're kind of challenged with, I've acknowledged that and I forgive myself for that. So before anybody books any time with me, I tell them, it's like, look, I can't fix any of your problems. I'm not guaranteeing I can fix anything. I'm just telling you that I can offer you my perspective from what I've experienced. So with any of these consulting calls that I work on with people, I try to let them know, it's like, this is a perspective. You can do whatever you want with it.
Graceful. I like that.
Yeah. So then it takes that burden off of me too. So it's like all the disclaimers are there. I'm not telling you I could fix your life. I'm not that person, and I don't claim to be.
You're not the guru.
And but if you want my perspective, I'm happy to share it with you, because I have a very complex and dynamic background that might be helpful to you.
That's beautiful. I love that. And that's also like, it just undoes the burden of you needing to be the guru. And that's one thing I found, that it was always kind of disarming for me a lot with like the self-development, self-help kind of generation and culture. It's just people sitting up on a podium saying that they know the answer. And it's really discerning to me, because it's like the moment that somebody says that, I'm like instantly like, oh, I'm turned off. The person that's humbled by the fact that they know nothing is the person that knows something. Which is the irony in itself.
Ironically.
Yeah. But like you said, it's like you've experienced it. You have a different perspective of life, which is, that's good that you give yourself that grace. I need to meditate on that a little bit and maybe give myself a little bit of that personally, just so I can be like, okay, you don't know everything, but you do know what you know. And that potentially could be, a value. That's why, I mean, that's kind of what the podcast is in a liquid form, and having these dynamic conversations, which is hopefully adding value. It does. I didn't realize how much value it added until I pulled it away. I took it away for like 2 years. And the outcry of fans of the podcast, it was like, I had no idea people were listening to this. Honestly, I couldn't believe it. And that was really cool. How do you deal with trolls and negative comments? It sounds like you got some grace going on. I want to hear about how you deal with a hater, a Matthew Encina hater. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, luckily, I would say that a lot of the content I put out there is not very divisive.
Yeah, you're smart about that too. I noticed. You actually, and then I don't want to segue, but I've noticed that you don't hate on things. When you put content out there, it's not divisive. You don't say, this is a beautiful thing when you're indifferent almost. I'm learning this concept of indifference, which is stoic connected in a lot of ways, but a lot of times I think on the internet is and we'll get back to the other question. I apologize, but this is a part of this thing that I really wanted to address, is that if you have not consumed Matthew's content, or however we should say this is his work, let's say it's your work, he has this graceful way of just saying what he's interested in and not comparing it to disarm or destroy other things. It's this really additive, graceful approach. This is in a world where everybody wants to be polarized. All the YouTube, like, this is whack, or Dieter Rams sucks, or all these things. Like, you're just saying, no, I'm interested in this, and that's cool if you don't like it. So, first and foremost, how did that kind of come about? How did you put that in your ecosystem? And then we can go back to the negative feedback stuff.
I think it's really driven by my personality. I don't like conflict.
Okay.
So
You've always been
already,
like that?
as a person, I think I've always been like that. So if there's any kind of conflict, I get very uncomfortable. I could feel it in my body, and I don't necessarily deal with it very well. So part of it is like, whether this is a good thing or not, I'm not judging. I'm just saying I typically avoid confrontational moments. So when that's my online personality or the things that I put out there, it's like, I have no right to judge you for what you do. And as much as I do not want to be judged for the things that I put out there, but people will still, there are trolls and whatever out there. But, for me, it's just like, this is my perspective. This is, like you said, this is what I like. This is what I know. And I'm okay with being wrong. And I try to be very transparent in moments where it's like, okay, this is a DIY project. I could be doing this wrong, but this is what I learned. And this is how I applied it. So I'm not trying to even say that, if you're joining two pieces of wood, this is the correct way to do it. I never try to come from that authoritative position. I just say, it's like, as a designer, from my perspective, this is how I saw this problem and this is how I solved it. Whether that's right or wrong, it doesn't really matter, right? You can judge. I think that's a waste of everybody's time if you want to spend your time judging other people's life and work rather than taking that energy and then working on your own thing, right?
Wow, you just solved world peace right there. Yeah.
Having said that, like, there are still the 5% of comments or energy that enters into my ecosystem that is negative. Okay. And I will say there's negative and then there's critical.
Yeah. How do you differentiate those two things?
Yeah. So my approach usually is when there's a critical and I'll get into the differences between the two. But whenever something that is not a positive, like, hey, yeah, good work, I love what you taught me here, right? If it's anything other than that, it's like, I'll get a comment in and it's like, oh, that kind of made me feel not great. Like, I don't love this comment. Like, what do I feel about this comment? And then, of course, a lot of instinct is to fight back or defend yourself.
Yeah.
And I try not to do either of those things. Instead, I try to win them over or try to have them expand on their logic by just simply asking a question. Right? Like if they say something like, oh, that's so expensive. Like, why would you spend money on that? And I'm talking about my recent product collab with GroveMate. Like people will, they fall out of their chair when they look at the prices.
Yeah,
for
GroveMate's
some of the
not
products.
cheap, but it's also fantastic quality. So,
right. Right.
Yeah.
And so usually with my argument for that is like, you're right. Like it's expensive. And then what, right? Or it's like, you're right, there are cheaper options out there. Go buy the cheap option.
Yeah.
Or if somebody has if they take the time to write paragraphs of stuff, and I've had a lot of that just means they've really give it a lot of thought. And those are typically a lot more critical, where they're trying to share their perspective. And those ones, I really try and absorb that. And I'm like, thank you for your comment. Thank you for your perspective, for helping me look at it this way. I didn't consider it.
Graceful.
And I will admit that first, and then I'll usually try and ask a question after. And usually something that might sound negative, or most people will take as a negative comment, is just somebody that wants to be heard, because we all just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And then usually it's sometimes followed up by a positive comment after that, which is really odd. Something that you think is somebody who's a hater, but really it's like they're just trying to provide some kind of critical feedback. Maybe they're not very graceful or tactful in the words that they use.
Yeah.
But so I always try to challenge myself. That's my daily practice for stoicism. It's like, how am I going to address this comment without being hateful or spiteful towards that person in return? I need to remove all of that. So I might write it once. I'm like, I'm judging them. Like let me remove those words, because I don't need to put that energy back in the world, right? If I keep feeding that, it's going to keep coming back to me. So rather, it's like, let me try to diffuse that. Let me actually try to win them over, best case scenario. And that's how I typically deal with these. So difference between critical and negative, in my opinion, from how I see it, is like, again, critical, if they take the time to really put out a long comment, that's critical. Even if it's short, the difference between critical and negative is negative, they'll just call you an idiot. Right? Like they will use name calling and defer to that without much substance within their comment.
Yeah, it's like weaponizing.
It's like, okay. Yeah, it's like, so you want to attack me, that's okay. I could block you or hide you from my channel. Like, I don't need that energy here. And so and there are very few people like that. Very grateful, again, because I think of the audience that I attract and the content that I make.
Yeah.
But for the rest of them, it's like, I try my best to see their perspective, acknowledge them because they want to be heard, and then try to find a way to win them over, or just like balance this out. Because like, I come in with a perspective, they have their conflicting perspective, and if we can just see each other's perspective and be like, oh yeah, I acknowledge that. Yeah. Oh yeah, I acknowledge that. We don't have to agree, but we can acknowledge that we're coming from different perspectives. Then usually it's like, okay, we're all good.
I love that. It's so hard to do when things are faceless and keyboards and the screen. It's just, I think it's an identity thing, or self-perseverance, or like preservation thing, or I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that have been written on this whole concept, but it's doing it to us cognitively. But it's really, it's inspiring what you're saying here, Matthew. It's inspiring to me because this is how I read comments. I have the most nagging, horrible voice when I'm reading them. It could be a good one, and I'm like, yeah, okay. But I've come to realize is I'm a very emotional person. I don't like conflict either, but when conflict comes to me, I push back hard, and I'm a fighter. This is my bad nature, though. It's like I'm an animal, and I need to really go against this, because I would so much rather be a much more graceful person. It's the person that I desire. It's the person that I don't wake up with, though. I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, I'm a savage animal. I just want to freaking crush it, So, and as I grow and as I learn, I realized this is one thing I was realizing, that I was getting both comments in the world. There was the negative and the positive. And if I was only acknowledging one of them, I was not acknowledging the other. Therefore, it was a zero. I told myself, don't acknowledge either. This is one thing that I realized years ago is you put your happiness in the hands of others, you're going to have a big problem, huge problem, because you aren't yourself. You're going to be living a vessel of others. And, but it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, let's get into this. It sounds like you allow it in, but you don't let it to take precedence of your psyche.
I try. It's a practice. It's difficult sometimes. Sure. And again, when somebody's very critical, or when the comment comes in and it's not overwhelmingly positive and it makes me feel a certain way, usually there are one thing in there is usually, if it's hurtful, that's because there's some truth in there. Yes.
This is the thing that kills me, because I'm like, if that hurts, and if all this hurts, that means there's truth in that. Oh man, I suck. I really do suck.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it's okay. It's like and truth is still subjective from somebody's perspective.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
But it just means that there's something there that is, it's like, where all the bodies are buried. You can see the mistakes, you can see the render errors, whatever. Like, you can see the flaws in this thing that I put out there, right? Because I think I saw in one of your old interviews, like you really put your art and heart into your art, right? When you put it out there. So therefore you feel everything when people react to it. And I get that. And I think when comments come in, it's just revealing a version of truth, whether you accept that or not. The thing that has been helpful for me to process this was many years ago in, I think it was 2019, I went into a program called the Alt MBA by Seth Godin. It's like one of these little programs that's 13 weeks long, and they make you work and see the world in a very different perspective. So it's a leadership program. I really didn't know what I was signing up for. Chris Doe paid for it and signed me up for the course because he's like, I think they're doing something cool over here, but I don't have the time to take it. Do you want to take it and then kind of just share with the group what you learned? I was like, okay, that sounds good. And then I got signed up for 13 weeks of very challenging work. But I say that I highly recommend the program for anyone.
What's the program called again?
Needs to Alt MBA.
Oh, okay, I've heard this, and I know who Seth is. So
yeah. So I think the two things that I personally got out of it was how to become a better decision maker, and then how to actually empathize with people. Because I think the word empathy is thrown around a lot these days. It has been a very big buzzword, especially in design, but I don't think anybody really knows what it means or how to practice it or how to get better at it. And I think this program, there was one very particular exercise in there that I want to share with you. Hopefully I'm not like doxing and destroying the program, but maybe this will encourage people to sign up. It was the most powerful empathy exercise I had ever done in my life. And it was this. So there's a prompt in there, and each project is responding with an essay. However you want to respond to it, any format, whatever. But this was the prompt. It's like, okay, choose something you're very passionate about, something you have a strong belief or values in. Now take the opposing side that you believe and write an essay as to why they're right.
Yeah, that's how you stimulate empathy. Because empathy is about understanding the other side, really. Intrinsically and wholly and fully everything. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think for me, what I chose was like, I'm going to choose to write about white nationalists. It's like, I don't agree with them. Like, I feel a way, like I feel like there's some kind of oppression towards me, but let me revisit their perspective. Why are they right to feel the way that they're, and white nationalists within the United States, right? And this is like at the peak of all of those emotions and things that were going on in our country then. So it was a really hot topic, but it was fascinating to explore that perspective. And it really helped me empathize with that group, even though I didn't agree with them. But after that assignment, it just helped me understand, like, somebody that's looking at me from a different perspective, they're not wrong. They're actually right from their perspective. Yeah. And we're both right? So again,
two
truth
rights
is
are wrong,
subjective.
and two wrongs are right.
That's right.
And nothing matters.
That's exactly. Nothing matters. It's all perspective.
It's all perspective.
And exactly. So I realize it's like I gotta put my hammer down. Like, I'm not here to judge anybody, because then I am also accepting judgment. Right? It's like I have to try and release those things from me, because it's like we're just experiencing life in very different ways. How we react to it is like all very different, and nothing is wrong and nothing is right. Yeah. And I just try to look at life from that perspective. So when a negative comment comes in, if it's really just there to hurt me, it's like, again, I don't need to see that. It's not helpful. It's not a good use of my energy. But if it's something critical, they don't agree with me, I think we can just share perspectives in a cordial way where we get a mutual understanding of each other. And it's like, I could feel good about leaving that comment there. I'm not going to erase it. I'm not going to block it. I'm going to let other people read it.
As you should.
I wouldn't want people to see
the how does Matthew deal gracefully through this navigation? And when people see that, they go, wow, that's inspiring, because now and not only has he proven to be graceful, but he's also dealt with friction and distilled it.
Yes.
I think Chris taught me this a long time ago through a conversation we had as I was dealing with like some sort of friction of some sort on the outsides. And he was like, if somebody comes to you without clearly well-spelled words and a defined sentence structure, they are literally not worthy of you considering that feedback, because it isn't. They're not meeting you halfway. If you go out there and make something critical and I think it's probably the same thing where it's when it's like you're an idiot or you suck or blah 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 troll stuff. That makes sense to just be like, okay, well, and I'm thinking Web3 or something. There's going to be filters to basically remove a lot of that and make like that kind of stuff where it's like I don't want hate. I don't want that stuff in my ecosystem. I don't need it in my head, and I don't want it in my life. I always look at like the internet, if you can look at it almost like walking down the street. When I'm walking down the street, if somebody says, hey, dickhead, I'm going to be like, eat your teeth. You know, like we're having, this is it. But on the internet, I can't. And it was one of the hardest things, because I grew up in multiple ghettos. I was like the only white kid. So it was always a problem. I was always fighting. There was a lot of stuff, but at the same time, it gave me this personality that is quick to jump through the conflict through full on like armament, basically. But as I get older, I realize, as you mentioned, it's like I need to disarm that part and realize that that's not what's happening, or it is happening, but let me just put this over here.
That's my dog.
Is that your little baby?
You know, it's my dog Chewy. He's 13. He's an old man, but sometimes he's sleeping, and then sometimes he'll just wake up and start howling. Yeah, either he had like some crazy dream or something. It's okay. And then he gets grounded. He's like, oh wait,
I'm back.
I'm safe.
He just had a negative feedback thing that happened. Yeah,
that's right. He was dealing with the troll.
Well, the timing.
Dream, so.
He sounds like me when I deal with it. Yeah. I love. We have a wonderful little pup too. Dogs are the best. They're such a great reminder of like to simplify life and to keep it at the core, which is. Yeah, right. And they're like
they have all the answers.
They do.
They can't speak to us, but they're trying to show us. It's like
they're in the embodiment of it,
here.
Which I love. I love that. That's really. I love that. That's fantastic. I love that you build this. That you have this way of, and also you're humbled by it. That you said it's a daily practice of taking in this thing and then filtering it basically, which is really good, because you're in the public space, and you're. Not only is it just you, but you know your wife is involved in this thing, and your dad and your brother, and like you're exposing them to this thing too. Is that ever become a worry for you, or you just go?
Yeah. I try to be very careful about that stuff, and I always ask first if they're okay with being in front of camera. So I'm not a person to go out there in public and shove cameras in people's faces for
you don't seem like it.
Capturing content, you know what I mean? Like I get uncomfortable filming in public anyway, right? Yeah. So, but there's still a big section of my life that's very private that is not public, and those are things that my wife is actually pretty she's pretty strict on herself, or like things. She's like, I don't want anybody to know these private things.
Yeah, same with my wife too.
And so she's developed that for me, that side of that sense of armor. Because otherwise, I'm definitely very optimistic about people. And when I see a stranger on the street, my assumption is that they could be a friend rather than a foe, where my wife is the opposite. It's like, let me put my defenses up first because I don't know what your intentions are. Where my automatic assumption is that everybody's intention is inherently good. So it's just, we have very different perspectives. I've learned a lot from her and vice versa. So that there are a lot of aspects of my life where I'm very careful of not trying to dox myself and like put all of the details out there. But I know it is a risk when it comes to living a public life. So I'm carefully treading that. I know I could be better. But at the same time, there are aspects of my life. It's like, if I share this, it will help other people see the possibilities in themselves. Again, like I could have built all this stuff and not shown the hardships or the people that have helped me throughout the process, right? And then they will assume like, oh, Matthew's a rock star. Of course he could do this. I could never do that. But if you see people helping me, like my dad, and we're coming up with weird, novel solutions that isn't correct, then it humanizes me a little bit more. It's like, oh, I could relate to that. So I'm aware of these things. I'm carefully navigating it. And if it ever gets to the point where I blow up all crazy, then I would definitely scrutinize a lot of aspects of my life to make sure that I feel protected and safe when it comes to, my vulnerabilities in that sense.
Yeah. I know you're familiar with this, but evolving to the point of success and living in that mountain of success is a whole other journey that most people don't anticipate, don't understand, and can't compartmentalize. And I see it. I mean, okay, let's just use Beeple, for example, my friend Mike. I am so happy that my friend became as successful as he is from just being himself. I'm even more happy that his family is fantastic and he came into that level of wealth when he was in his 40s, because I mean, the first thing I told Mike when this all happened, I was like, do you have a psychiatrist? Because you're going to need it, because everybody's going to come at you at all angles and you're going to need that defense. But my goodness, has he handled this stuff with grace on the level I can't even. It's fantastic. But yeah,
it's been fun to watch him. And just like, sometimes he'll just straight up laugh in somebody's face because it's like, are you kidding right now? Like, why are you coming at me this way?
Like that one guy who's like, how much do you make? He's like, really, guy? Like you're gonna ask me
the first question you're gonna ask, right?
Right to the point. That guy is so tacky, but it's clickbait stuff. So.
But I mean, he's good at just cutting through the bullshit because he's always been that way. And one thing that I appreciate about Mike is, he'll post his work and he'll never read the comments. He'll never respond.
Yeah, sometimes he
because
does.
Because it's always
so controversial.
Yeah, but most of the time it's just about the work for him, as it always has been. So even before social media, like, he was already doing the work in the same exact way, sometimes in a vacuum without any feedback. It's like, well, that was the point. And to this day, I think it's still the point. He'll make the thing that he wants to make.
Yes, it's performative and it's fantastic. And it's been really interesting. What are your honest thoughts on social media and apps like Instagram? What do you honestly think of them?
I think it's just like anything else in this world. Like, too much of it is bad.
How do you limit it?
You have to know. You can literally limit it on your phone and just say, like, hey, 30 minutes.
Oh, you do 30 minutes?
Just, I mean, I'll snooze that. I'm completely honest. I'll snooze that a couple times before I'm like, okay, this is pestering me. It's annoying. I should probably put it down. And I think lately I've been definitely feeling the urge to step away from it a little bit more.
Why is that?
But just because I feel like it's starting to... I'm not getting as much out of it.
Yeah, same. It's a one-way street.
I like to, exactly. I like to consume content to fuel my creations.
Yeah.
So I love following people and, getting inspired by other people's works or ideas or just things that they put out there. But at a certain point, it's oversaturated. It's like, I can't use that anymore. It's like, I I've seen this already, or it's like, well, I'm consuming more than I'm creating, and that's a bad balance. So I become aware of those things, and then it's like, okay, that's when I need to step back.
So you're oversaturated.
So that's one. Yeah, that's one aspect. Knowing like why am I using this tool, and just trying to ask myself that all the time and be very clear. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I want to build an audience around the things that I care about, but I'm not trying to build an audience just to build an audience.
This is back to the why, which is the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, this is true. The intention of the why.
Yeah, and I see a lot of my peers who grow really fast, and happy for them. And my whole thing is I hope they have a clear why. I hope they know what they're doing with this, because some people, I feel like they're growing just to grow. And in those cases, I sometimes see these people become a machine feeding the machine.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a machine feeding another machine.
Yeah, don't do that.
Right?
Yeah, that would be horrible.
Right.
Well, it's a byproduct of the capitalist system. You get rewarded by having a harvest, but I don't know how many of my friends that are YouTubers have real bad problems with their mental game, because they're just like, my life is just a matter of making content, and I'm turned this whole thing into this drug that's this machine that's destroying my life, because all I can do is just make content. And when you're a YouTuber, you're also like, well, I don't know if YouTuber is a term, if you're a content creator, whatever, you are everything alone.
Right. You're the product.
You're the product, which is because like, you're like, I love this, your breakdown in Notion, because I for years I've been dabbling with the idea of putting myself out there and doing some more it's like things and sharing the things that I love with the universe and stuff. But I'm like, it's so much work, like building a script, having intention, knowing how to cleanly and clearly objectively say what you're thinking in a very clean and concise way with style and grace, and film it and edit it and do the sound. It's just like, wow, it is so much. But but you look at Instagram and all this stuff, like Twitter and stuff, as tools, devices to basically help you, but they're a limitation to them, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I look at these things also as very ephemeral and temporary, because I know any of these platforms can go away, and I'm okay with that. Like, I know that because I've seen so many people, especially in YouTube, because it's been around longer, just go through the gamut of like spike, and then all of a sudden their channel is dead. And then what do? And I just see them kind of drown and flounder. Like, I don't know what they do post peak. And for me, it's
Starbucks.
like I already know. It's like, exactly. And I'm okay with that. But that's why I'm kind of building other ventures and exploring other things. To me, like, YouTube has been great for a pillar. It's like, hey, this is great. It's just a way for me to reach people and connect with people.
This is how we're connecting.
But that is, exactly. And that's not the end, though, right? It's like, so what if that is like the base of my tree? It's like, what are all the beautiful branches that can grow out of this? And that's what I've been exploring now. And that's the fun thing. It's like, I've gotten into industrial design. It's like that. I did not go to school for that. I did not aspire to be that. But here I am doing these collaborations with GroveMade and other companies. And I'm starting to learn about this space. And it's a natural extension of me being a digital designer, having that mindset and approach, me dabbling into DIY and craft making and building things. And it's like, okay, these two worlds converge. Industrial design based off of the things that I'm actually passionate about, which is stuff around the desk space and desk accessories and the ways we work. It's like, wow, this came full circle, but I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't planning for that. It just happened because all I cared about was me satiating this curiosity. It's like, I'm hungry for more. Give me more. And because I know I can go deeper and there's more. It's that like in Japan, right? The otaku is the phrase for it. It's like people, like there are some hardcore people in Japan. I feel like they're culturally one of the types of people where it's like, if they have an obsession, like that is a different level of obsession, you know, like that movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi.
Yeah, of course.
I remember like their apprentices there, right? Like they'll go 10 years of apprenticeship. And like for most people, like they can't even do 6 months.
Yeah, there's an intention
before the advancing.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's so romantic from the outside.
From the outside, right? I can't speak on the inside, but obviously as an external viewer, it's like it seems
so beautiful.
It seems beautiful.
Well, I think I think in our culture, I mean, just speaking to it, not to criticize it, but to criticize it in the point of growth, is that a lot of us Americans and people, we consume so rapidly, and we're so it's so vapid. It's so there's no connection to soul, to self. It's very rare. I know you mentioned breakdancing and stuff. I used to breakdance too. Breakdancing was like a way of being yourself, expressing yourself, and sharing yourself with the world in form of dance. I think a lot of things with making things is literally the same extension. It's like, who am I? What am I doing? What's my intention? And I think the thing that I love about Japanese culture is literally that. It's distilled intention. And it's just the best thing ever. It's just, I love Japan. My wife's half Japanese. We go to Japan as much as we can. We haven't been since COVID, which is like a total travesty. But yeah, yeah, Japanese culture. I grew up in Hawaii too, so like Japanese culture is like deeply connected to Hawaii as well. So yeah, I see a lot of your love of Japan and your intention and approach to things. Like you're interested in like the quiet minutia of perfection almost, does that make sense?
Most people it's like, the details that nobody will see.
But they feel.
Nobody will see the details. They feel, because the compound effect of very precise details make all the difference for something that's good to great, right? And I learned this too working with the GroveMate guys. It's really interesting because, again, they're industrial designers. They build stuff. And I come from the digital space. And when we were collaborating on our project together, we're making the different items, prototyping things, sketching things. And then they would show me, it's like, and I would ask them, it's like, oh, why is this, 4.63 inches?
Oh, the blade.
They're like, well, that seems right. Yeah. Or something. It's like, well, that feels arbitrary. And then they showed me, it's like, oh, when this lines up next to this, they're the exact same width. Or when you rotate it this way, it's the same exact width as something else. I was like, oh my gosh. Like I didn't even consider that. But they think about those things. It's like they think about the ecosystem. They think about how things interact in those small details. It's like, no wonder their tools and accessories are so cohesive and they look so great with each other, because they think about how they interact and all the details that you and I are just casual people do not care about or just cannot see. We cannot fathom it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it probably gives you a deep appreciation for Apple as a whole. They're the king of the game.
All of the details are considered. Oh my
goodness, especially when Steve was around, and still to this day too. The team, it's just some of the best in the world at caring about those things that you take for granted, the operating system, the way that it functions in your life, and the friction free as much as possible kind of things. I know this because I own both. I don't own Android or anything, but I own the PC, and there's a different form of friction that occurs through this usability. But yeah, and good and bad. It's also just good to see it. I love that you're doing these things. It's cool that you've crossed the threshold, because the last video you made and published, I think, was about you breaking over to this new threshold. And I know that these videos are often made and then they're released months out. So you're in the future tense of this experience. Where are you at now? What is this future that you're building? What does it look like? What's exciting you?
Yeah. Well, since I released that video and that product with GroveMate, the note-taking kit, it's interesting because all of a sudden that catches the attention of other people, and I have a case study to talk about.
Yes.
Right? I'm business sure with card. All of like the big projects. Yeah, it's a business card. It's like all the big projects that you've done in your life.
Yes.
It's like it becomes a calling card for you. People's like, oh, I know you for that thing you made.
Yeah, people be like, why are you doing cars? And then I'm like, here's the Batmobile. Like, oh, okay, you're legit now. It's like, okay, I was doing this whole time. But okay, yeah.
Right.
Okay, this is good.
It's like you're quietly working on it. You can kind of see it. And maybe you don't know what the end goal is, like, because that's not the point. The point is just to get better and satiate your curiosity in this space that you're so passionate about. And you just can't help but make something to contribute to that space. It comes out of you, right? Like you consume all of this, and it's almost like you sweat and bleed this out. It's just like it comes out in the it's the muse, exactly. And you can feed it. You can really feed it if you're quiet enough to listen to it, away from all the noise of the trends and everything that's going on out there. It's just like, let me listen to me. What is the thing that's calling me right now? And that's what this big journey has been for me ever since I quit my full-time job at the Future 2 years ago, which is I'm going to set sail. I'm going to let the winds of curiosity kind of pull me in the direction and just navigate from there. So what I've been working on since then has kind of been interesting, right? As soon as I quit, I got all these job offers. I said, no, I don't want to go into another job.
How did you decide not to do that? I don't mean to cut you off, Pieter, but a lot of people that listening to this, when you go out to be freelance, it's really a very big leap in your life. You're saying, you see this institution that everybody's like climbing to get into. I'm jumping ship, and I'm somehow going to grab onto this raft, and I'm going to sail off, if metaphorically, on the winds of curiosity. This is always a big leap, and it's something that I have spent a lot of time helping my friends and people I love, saying, you're fine, I will help you, you will be fine, this will be fine. Then you went, so you had all these opportunities, blessed, which is fantastic, but then saying no to that, very even privileged. How did you do that? How did you find the courage to do such a thing? Yeah,
so courage, certainty, I mean, everybody tells me from the outside, it's like, oh, wow, you took a big risk. And for me, I was like, I didn't feel risky at all. Maybe that's that blind confidence in myself, but more so, it's like I'm risk averse. So I don't blindly just drop everything without consideration. So while working full-time at one job, quietly, I've kind of been building a lot of things around that.
Side hustle.
So my personal YouTube channel, gaining different revenue streams through that pillar until the point of 2021 where that income was the same as my full-time job. So it's like, okay, this is half of my effort, or like partial effort, and a lot of my energy is being given to other people. What happens if I take that same energy and then fuel this thing instead? Where does that go?
Yeah. That's good that you're risk averse,
and I watched this
because you build a mechanism to avoid it. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was I had to talk to my accountant first. I was like, "Hey, is this a stupid idea?"
I remember you mentioned this in your video.
And he looked at, I definitely captured this in a video to help people understand like how I made this decision, because it's not like a, hey, I quit everything and romanced my life and it's all working out. It's like, no. It was heavily considered for 2 years.
I always tell people you need to have 6 months of income in the bank before you do the leap. You have to, because you could hit a dry spell for 3 months, and you need to be able to have fallback. Yeah, so you don't make bad choices.
And I kept that in mind. Good. And when my accountant looked at my books, he's like, "You have 18 months of runway."
Fantastic.
He's like, "You could fail for 18 months and you'll be fine." I was like, "That's a long time."
It's nice to hear it from the accountant too, an outsider. That's a professional that you pay for that stuff. You're like. Yeah.
Exactly. There are numbers, like they're not emotional about anything at all.
Good.
And then the second thing he said, he's like, invest in yourself, because that's going to have the best returns.
Always, baby.
I was like,
this is it.
I was like, oof, okay.
Your accountant said that?
Sold. Yeah, my accountant said that.
That's a very awesome accountant to give you the inspiration and also the cognitive thought. I mean, the actual poignant thoughts. Yeah, which is fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's confirming things, I want to believe, and it's like I just need an outside, objective perspective, and he was that for me. So ever since I quit, with knowing that I have a lot of kind of safety raft, I'm not going to get stranded. Like I have room to fail, a lot of room to fail, and that was because I built this second ship to depart on while I was still steering the first, or on board the other one. At a certain point, I was like, okay, now this is diverging. I can comfortably step off, and knowing that they're going to be okay, and I'm going off in a direction that feels right for me. So I had a lot of momentum out of the gate. And again, it comes from this abundance mindset. It's like, hey, I've been able to build all these things. I've been able to acquire these things, build relationships, whatever. Like, why not me? Why can't I do these things? And that took a lot of mental processing for me to be able to feel confident to do that. Once I was out there, I knew that if I were to take another job offer, it would just bring me back into the noise. it's the gravity of somebody else's world pulling me in, and then all of a sudden it's like I have to deal with the parameters of their world. It's like, no, I just release myself for that. Actually, I need a couple more months before I even have fully left the orbit of where I came from to feel the kind of the freedom and unlimited room of space. It's like, okay, I'm out here. Now where do I want to go? Like, now all the noise is gone. And that's where I started just kind of leaning into the things like, hey, what am I curious about? What am I interested in? I knew a big thing for me is I want to become a better storyteller in whatever format that happens. And then my friends over at Webflow hit me up and they're like, hey, do you want to direct a documentary that we're producing here? And I was like, I'm not a documentary director, but that sounds interesting because it's aligned with my goal to become a better storyteller. Let me take on this project because it's interesting. And it also allowed me to travel a bit. So I was like, coming out of the pandemic, it felt right.
And you had to be accountable
like, okay,
too, so
this.
you couldn't jump away and make an excuse to like, it's just for me, so I'm gonna leave, or I'm not. Project-based learning with objective, accountable goals is like literally the best way to put the pressure cooker on yourself to actually learn. And you're like, I can't believe I just did that, but you can. It's the crazy thing. You're the biggest doubter, but it's like once you silence that inner doubter, you're just like, okay, then you but you don't want to go Kanye level where you're just like, I'm not bad, I'm God. You're like, okay, no, come on, come back down to us,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that was an interesting project because, outside of money, the whole thing was like, I want to level up my skills as a storyteller in this medium. And I don't know too much about documentaries. I love them. And then that's where earlier we were talking about books and consumption and how to consume it in a better way. The question in my mind is like, how do I tell documentary stories? So what did I do? I started watching documentaries with this question in mind. So I would watch it for entertainment first and then watch it again for how did they structure this? What questions did they ask to elicit this from the person in front of the camera? Yeah, so I'm just doing reverse engineering of all of these great documentaries. Yeah. And now I had templates, like different methodologies and frameworks to work in. And it's like, okay, which of these is going to be applicable for the project that I'm working on? And I took the different pieces, kind of strung them together. And I released a few episodes of this documentary with Webflow. And it was a fantastic project for me. It's like I challenged myself in so many different ways, learned something new, and I still earn money from that, and it was fantastic. And that was one of a couple of things that have gone on. The thing we were talking about earlier is GroveMade. So GroveMade, they make beautiful desk accessories out of Portland. They knew me for all of the content I made around the desk setup space. We were very aligned in how we think, and as soon as I quit, it wasn't only a few weeks after, they're like, hey, do you want to design a product with us?
Yeah, there you go.
And I said, hey, I'm not an industrial designer. I'm not a product designer. And they're like, but that's not what we need. Yeah, you're like the power user. We want to get into how you think, how you work, and then build a product around that.
Natural.
And so there was a long 2-year process in between many things that we're working on, and it just released last month, and that's been a fantastic.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. But not everything is
of course not.
Not everything is rainbows and sunshine, right? Like, one thing that I got a book publishing deal. It was a few months out from quitting, and editor hit me up, and they're like, hey, I see that you teach stuff online. I see you speak at places. Usually those types of personalities are really good for writing books. Do you want to write a book? Have you ever aspired to write a book? I was like, oh, shoot. That sounds good. Publish author. My ego is kind of creeping in. It's like publish author. Heck yeah, let's add that to the resume. So for a couple of months, we worked through the negotiations. I got a deal. I started writing my book. And then at every check-in, I started feeling weird, but I didn't listen to it. Like there was something really weird about every time I shared progress, I would get weird feedback. And I was like,
Can you describe
it's like
weird?
My gut is telling me something. Yeah, weird as in, like, hey, I want to make the book about this. And they're like, well, maybe you should kind of make it a little bit like this.
So the feedback was moving you away from your authentic
compromises. Yeah. And it's like, you know what? I'm a first-time author. I want to get this book made. I'll make the compromise. Next milestone. It's like, okay, well, it's like I really want to make these kind of like a self-help book, some self-help creative book, something paperback, something really small that you could toss in your gym bag. It'll get beat up. You'll highlight it. Like
Usable.
There's a book that I see in my mind. Yeah,
it's a book want.
That's very useful. It's a book I want. And then they're like, yeah, but maybe you should try this size, like 8 by 10. I was like, 8 by 10, that's kind of big. And I can't throw that in my bag. And they're like, yeah, but just try it. And I was like, okay. So I designed the book, like a good chunk of the book. Yeah. And then I presented it to them. It's like, okay, I did it your way. I still want to write the book this size. And they're like, we're not changing the size of the book. I was like, what?
Because it costs.
Exactly. They said, if you make your book any smaller, we can't charge over $30 or whatever for it. And that changes the whole structure of the deal. I was like, I wasn't aware of that. No one told me that. Yeah. And now I feel like I'm just filling your pages rather than writing my book.
Yeah.
I'm done with this. And I'm just like, I left the deal.
Good for you.
I'm not. It's like, okay, I have a half cookbook somewhere here.
It'll come out.
And
you'll finish it. Well, actually,
when it's right.
I mean, hopefully, what you've made isn't intrinsically connected indefinitely to these people. It depends on your contract and how you dealt with it, but.
Yeah, no, I retained all the IP,
great.
So it's all mine.
IP retention, please, if everybody's listening, retain your IPs at all costs.
Yeah, they don't own it, so it's like there was no money exchange. Like it was very clean. It's like, okay, this is mine stuff. You guys keep whatever, and that was nothing pretty much because I did all the work at that point.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
that book is going to get made eventually. It's just a natural. It's just a matter of one. I always use the analogy. It's like when you close a window or you open up a door, you let the wind through the house. And when you close one door, you don't know. And when you're casting as wide a net as you are on YouTube and the other platforms in which you share yourself with, you're going to get these weird things that's going to come at you like you never even thought, like, oh, a yacht designer? Yeah. Well, it's like somebody's private desk in a yacht. Like, this is weird, But then there you are in the Mediterranean Sea talking about desk. I don't know.
Right.
You never know.
On a yacht. It's like, this is good.
Life is crazy. Life is if you put yourself out there, life can really be a voyage of a discovery, which is as you discovered, which is cool. I'm looking forward to that book and reading it and supporting it by buying it at some point. So yeah, I'm sure it'll happen. That's actually really smart too. It's always like you need to make the thing that you are most interested in, which is again to the why, so, and you mentioned
and not letting the ego get in the way, because I think that was the thing that was holding me on for so long. Because it was by the time I quit or left that publishing deal, it felt like I was already pulled in so many directions, and I was like, why am I still doing this? And my wife was the one who's like, F those fools. Like, why are you even making compromises with them? It's your book. And I'm like, oh, you're right. And that was such a huge relief. And it was one of those things. It was a hard learning lesson, but I learned so much from the process. Regardless that book has not been made, it's like I learned how to write a book for the same reason with the documentary and the product. It's like, I don't know how to write a book. Let me research how to write a book. Let me study the books that I like. And now I feel very good about that process, that when the timing is right, I can complete something like that.
I love that. And that's good to look at it. And that's another stoic nature thing. It's like you look at every lesson, good and bad, and extract from it, And also shout out to your wife for seeing the vision clear. My wife is the same thing. She's like the canary in the coal miner's little tunnel, whatever. Yeah. She's the one just says, no, this is whack. Yeah, screw that. Like you need to focus on you because you're not happy and all these kind of things. But that's an interesting thing to say, that your ego, you had so much invested in. You're like, I've already come this far. I need to finish it. But bless you for not compromising and having enough mental fortitude to say, like, I'm willing to take a big loss for my own sanity. And that's really good. When you get into these situations, and man, I don't know how to describe how many times I've been in that exact position because a lot of my dreams, goals, and aspirations acquire me to work with others. I love it and I hate that. I love it when there's alignment. I hate it when there's not. And when I make something with full intention and they come back with the notes and stuff, and it's like, what are we doing here? Are we making the thing, or are we making your thing? Or are we not making either of them? And when to know when to compromise, which is
Right.
There's no, because if we really truly believe that artist's objective and opinions are nullified, zero sum everything, then their opinions are right and yours are right. So therefore, it's a matter of personal happiness. And then you go, okay, well, I'm not happy right now. It's really tricky.
Right.
So the future for you, because I know we're wrapping it up here, and be cautious of our time. I'm really happy that we managed to do 2 hours. I was worried that we would only have 1 hour, and I really wanted to get into this with you. The future for you, what are we looking at? If we have this conversation in 1 year and then year 5, where are you at? Where do you want to be, and where are you putting yourself in the universe?
Yeah. I mean, I don't look that far ahead. It's really hard to know what I'm even doing next week.
Interesting.
So while on the outside it might look like I'm a very meticulous planner, and there is an intensity to that, I think I'm so focused on the thing right in front of me, the thing that I'm excited or curious about, that I can't see anything else, and that includes like the planner a year from now. But what I can tell you is like some things that are in motion. I already have a few other products in like the desk accessory space and the keyboard space that I'm designing right now. So it's fun. Like these things that were just passion projects before have now become something where I get to engage. I get to express my version, my artistry out there, and then looping that into a commerce aspect, learning how to make revenue from that, and kind of expanding my business. For me, the big thing is building this separate kind of creative studio or persona called Mod Musings, which it's my second Instagram account that it's my brand now. Like that's the name of my company, and I want to see that. I think my aspiration is to be somebody like a Massimo Vignelli, or somebody who is, they're like, I'm a designer, but for what industry and for what product can be for many things.
Yeah.
And for him, there's a very famous quote. He's like, if you can design one thing, you can design anything. And I really feel that.
It's the truth.
And it is the truth. It's just an approach of how you see solving a problem and coming up with novel, interesting solutions for that. And I'm definitely in what I feel is a personal renaissance where that could be anything. And I'm not putting big expectations other than what am I curious, what makes me happy right now, and then how can I overlap all of these things between joy and commerce and bringing in an audience that also is interested in these things. How can I fold these up in a way that kind of makes sense, where there's not a lot of friction and it's easy for me to do these things.
So you can stay in your place of, like, I think that you've probably experienced it enough. You've experienced enough life to know when there's a lot of friction here and then there's a little bit here less. It's still hard, which is great. You can't make everything easy, but there's less friction, which makes it even more enjoyable. So you can be in that bubble of muse and live friction free. That is ultimately a goal. But you only get there by risk taking, by planning, by intention, by asking yourself why. When you wake up in the morning, can you give us a routine? I would like to know the morning, how you start, and then I'd like to know how you end your day too. I'm curious of that.
Yeah, so every day usually starts around 6 a.m. Either I just wake up because I can't sleep anymore, or my dog Chewy is licking me on the face. Like, it's time to go out, human, and you need to get up anyway. So 6 a.m. I get up, I'll take my dog out, and then usually I'll make a coffee and then just get right to work. I'll sit at my computer, and usually from 7 till noon, I just am working. Like, whatever the thing is in front of me, whether that's designing or writing or kind of like catching up on
projects.
Hardest
task in the beginning?
In it.
Hardest task, or do you plan the night before too?
I don't know if it's. I don't plan the night before. I just I always hit the ground running because I feel genuinely excited about a lot of the stuff I'm working on.
Makes sense.
So, and some of those things, they just need to get done too, right? There's real deadlines for things, and it's like, if that's the case, then those are the things that take priority, and I get myself hyped up and excited about those things. So sometimes, for instance, like editing a video, for instance, it's not necessarily the most fun thing in the world, but I kind of mentally shift. It's like, I'm excited to launch this video. So all of a sudden, like all of my energy and momentum is driven towards that. So, those are the types of projects that happen in the morning. Usually around that time between 7 and 12, I will mix in a workout. So what I'll do is like I'll work for maybe like 2 hours or something. And then it's like, okay, well, I need to get out of my chair and I'm going to start working out. So I'll do some kind of workout routine where I have sets. Where it's like, okay, I'm going to do, 16 reps of this thing. And then I need to take a 5-minute break. And in that 5-minute break, sometimes I will jump right back onto my computer and start designing or working on something or consuming some content that's going to be helpful for me relative to what I'm working on. And then just intermittently kind of bring my workout into my work. And it's weird because it's those moments where sometimes I get my best ideas, right? Just like for your run, for me, that's my workout. And I intermingle it with my work. And I do it all in the same room in this home office here.
Interesting. Well, it's good that you take care of your physical too. And waking up as early as 6 is also really, really interesting too. And do you do a cold shower and all that kind of stuff? I can't.
No.
It's
I've tried.
gnarly.
It's hard.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't enjoy this. And it's already hard for me to get up this early. So I'm like, I'm not doing this. Yeah. But it does build mental toughness. That's for sure. I did jujitsu for like 7 years. And like jujitsu's whole practice is to humble yourself through a full on battle and mental and physical battle, which is really difficult, obviously. But the cold showers reminded me of like being in the pinnacle crush of jujitsu's like grip basically. And I was like, oh, this is okay. So, and I recently got into coffee as well. Thanks to you, thanks to a bunch of my friends. Also like, cause I'm big into cycling and the cycling community is big into coffee as well. My wife's been drinking it for forever. And so that's been really interesting. But the coffee thing is I guess it's another vice. We love wine too. We live in wine country. So it's like, we just adore drinking wine from so I kind of equated the same thing. The first time I had wine, I was like, this tastes horrible. Same coffee. This is horrible. And then I'm like, okay, it's a little less bad here. And this is a little bit better. And yeah. And then you just kind of find your niche, The obsessions come in.
Yeah. Your obsessions come in. Yeah. So, I mean, for me to go back to my day, like, I'll usually work up until noon. And then at that point, that's when I'll take a shower. And after that, usually I'll head to the office.
A noon shower.
So I have a studio.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll take a shower in the middle of the day.
Wow, your process is totally different from everybody's.
Yeah. Well, so it's like, then it's like I consider that the start of my real day. I almost ignore or forget that I did 4 hours of work in the morning. Because like I'll shower because usually around that time is when my wife heads into work. She's a tattoo artist and she goes in late and stays at the shop late. So we kind of leave around like a later than usual time. So I try to align my schedule with her so we could
dinner
spend
time and stuff.
More time together. Yeah. So it's like, okay, she goes to work and I'll head to work around like 1 or 2.
Your studio is somewhat close in proximity, so you're not wasting time. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. It's about like a 20-minute drive. So it's just enough where it's like I'm far enough away where once I get to the studio, all I can do is work. Like I'm not distracted by the things at home. And my studio space, like, I mean, I love
beautiful.
being there, but typically the things, thank you. Things I do there mostly is just like shooting and editing. Because like that space, I built it to be photogenic and for it to host all the things that I want to capture for my content. So the second half of the day for a couple of hours is either filming something, building something there, or editing. And that usually takes me until the evening. And I'll eat somewhere in between there. I usually fast until...
Oh, do you do the intermittent stuff too, where you keep it in a window? Is that intentional or is that not intentional?
It was something that I was very intentional a few years ago. And it just kind of stuck with me. Yeah,
becomes just routine.
It just feels very natural. Yeah, it just feels very natural.
Are you good with your diet or are you bad with it?
It depends. I've been very good lately.
Because of routine?
At the peak of, of me releasing my product with GrowMade, that's when I had so many things stacked up and I was very much into work and not working on myself. Okay, So after that point, I was like at my heaviest weight in my entire life. But ever since I launched that, it's like, okay, I'm going to redirect that energy back on myself and reprioritize health, workout, all that stuff. And, you know, since I launched that a month ago, I've already lost like 7 pounds. So I'm like trimming back down again. I'm like, okay, I know I've done this before. Like I've been very obsessed with my health and workouts before when I was, you know, young 20s.
Yeah,
you know,
that's good.
And yeah, so it's like, okay, I just need to revert back to that. Let me build this back into my system. So yeah, that.
You guys like to cook too? You and your wife like to cook?
Yeah.
Cooking,
yeah,
so fantastic. It's my favorite art form because you can consume it. It's the most usable art form. It's giving life too. It's fun. It's one of my favorite things to do for people I love. It's like, I'm going to cook you something because I love you and I want you to enjoy like food done my way. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is interesting. I love cooking because it's also another activity that makes it so I cannot think about work. It takes me completely out of work because I have to really focus on what I'm cooking. Because there's an art into that too, right? It's like, how am I cutting these mushrooms, or how am I searing the steak, the timing on that? Like those things are so critical that I can't even, I'm present in that. And I love that. It's like, okay, for 2 hours, it's like it's mealtime. And I can't even think about work, which is good because
I need this 2-hour dinner. Yeah. That sounds good. you and your wife don't have kids?
No, just
You're not planning to have kids?
I don't know yet. It's something I love the idea of it. I haven't completely warmed up to it, and I know there's many factors in there, but you know, if it happens, it'll
I didn't think so, but I wanted to just because it makes sense. It's a whole different thing, a different dynamic to your life that would probably shift it. It would just flip it upside down. Yeah.
It's another project to invest into, a tiny human being.
That's the biggest project.
The biggest project.
After dinner time, I know we're almost done here. After dinner time, you guys hang out, do like, because my wife and I will watch like a show or something. We're watching Dave right now. Have you seen Dave?
I have not started it yet.
So good. It's quite brilliant. It's on Hulu. It's really good. But anyways, we just finished The Bear, which was really fantastic as well. That was really well done. Yeah. I used to be a chef in kitchen, like a cook, and it was like it's the first time I've ever experienced a show that makes you feel like the pressure of being in a functioning, dysfunctioning restaurant. It's the hardest job, the most horrible.
I'm glad you confirmed that, because I thought it felt kind of truthful. I read some of Anthony Bourdain's books, and like Kitchen Confidential was one that I really enjoyed from him. I didn't finish it, but the way he describes that environment, it sounds so chaotic. It sounds like you're just putting Band-Aids on everything to make it work, and somehow you get through you get through dinner, you get through service. Somehow every day it's a miraculous that it even happens. That's the way he describes it. You have
this world of chaos behind, and then you have this world of tranquility in the front. It's the most hypocritical, ironic thing that exists. I love open concept restaurants because I love seeing the pressure of the system working, you know? So, but Kitchen Confidential is on my list too. But that show.
But but I'm the same way. Usually by the end of the day, it's like, okay, I want to turn off everything. I want to slowly wind down, and usually it's with shows. So shows or movies is what we'll consume at the end of the day, and we both get tired by then. And 9? I usually fall asleep on the couch around like 10, around 10:30. Yeah. But, you know, then I'll wake up intermittently because my wife is more of a night owl. She wakes up much later than I do, and sometimes I get dragged into that and my schedule gets shifted. But I always wake up at 6 a.m. regardless. Like I cannot not sleep past that.
A body clock. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's also because the sun is coming up at that time.
That's good. Yeah.
So, like, I think my body knows. It's like, okay, sunlight is starting.
Do you go straight into sun when you wake up? I heard that's really interesting. I've been doing that, which is interesting. Like embracing the sun as like upon wake up, which is like stimulates some stuff.
Yeah. Well, I have to because I have to take my dog out. So he forces me to do it.
He's
which I love.
You that time to meditate and think about it. And then so 10 o'clock. That makes sense, dude.
Yeah, 10 to 12. It really depends on how tired I get, and I guess what we eat.
If whether it's like carb heavy and you just like carb load and pass out. I've heard it's really bad too. Right. I mean, there's so many things, right? I've been getting into the physiology of my own body because I'm I'm, of course, like you, I'm very obsessed with things. So I was like, let me ride a bike. And I was like, okay, let me ride a bike really fast. Okay. And then I'm like, let me build a crazy custom bike to go really fast. And now I'm like, now I need to set records and like, I'm trying to smash it. And so, but I realized, oh, the bike is as best as I can make it. Now it's my body. And then it's my mind.
It's the rider.
Like, whoa, now I need to understand nutrition and what I'm consuming and when I consume it and how I consume it and how I train for that and how I train my body to take in oxygen and all. It's just a whole thing. I don't know why I'm talking about this. I think it's this obsession, but
obsession.
Yeah,
I get it.
It's
those nuances, like we talked about earlier, the details make the difference.
Marginal gains is what we call it in cycling. It's called marginal gains. It's the little incremental things that add up to it. So, because everything like with it, this is called time trialing, is what I'm really interested in too. So it's like how you move your body through time. It's called the race of truth, which is, I also love it. It's a rider, the bike, and against time. And there's no like other human involved with it. Usually it's done in a velodrome, which is an internal like inside room basically that has like climate controlled to it. So so it's just like definitive. You know, if you are a world record holder at this duration, at this time, if you did the hour record, I've had Dan Bigeman, he on the podcast, he's an hour record holder, which is like, there's certain levels of athletes, and that's like mental toughness is like an hour of full pain. It's a whole nother level. These guys, their obsession is great, but I love it. It's another thing to fill your life with. It's a curiosity to fill it in with too. So, but I don't want to get on a tangent. Matthew, you're awesome. I really adore what you're doing. It's fantastic. I wish I was able to meet you physically at camp. Maybe someday we can meet in person. That'd be fantastic. Yeah. Please continue your path. You're inspiring me and many others, and I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy life to share it with the rest of us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me on here, asking good questions, and then sharing your perspective on this creative journey that we all get to go out on individually. And it's fun to be able to explore myself and share that with others, and then witness people like you take a completely different path and see where the paths cross over from time to time.
Absolutely. This podcast seems to be that watering hole for it also, which is a nice conduit. So thanks, man. Appreciate you. Take it easy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.